family legacies. Something I've been calling the family legacy panel. So welcome to the family legacy panel. My name is Serena, and I am a culture writer for the Baton Rouge Advocate. And with me today is Rosie Lee on this side. I tried to say a direction last time, and then I realized that our directions are different. But Rosie Lee is an author who writes hopeful stories about complicated families and complex friendships. Gardens of Eden, which is this book right here, is her debut novel. She's from the West Bank of New Orleans and lives in Atlanta. Rosie's writing is inspired by the people, traditions, and food that anchor her to the sun. And next to me now is Dr. Zelda Lockhart, a current Fulbright specialist engaged in cross-cultural story projects for generational healing in the U.S. and abroad. She holds a PhD in expressive art therapies and an MA in literature and has authored many books. Her work as an author and express arts consultant and educator centers the power of story and nature to connect us across barriers and heal our generations. Please join us in welcoming our panelists. Okay, we're kind of an intimate group. Wait.
Can you speak up?
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit louder?
Yes, I can. So, hello, can we all hear?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. We're in for a real treat, and we're kind of a more intimate group. So I just wanted to see where everyone is from. Can we get a woo if you're from Louisiana? Woo. Okay, so this part of the room. And then if you're not from Louisiana, okay, this part of the room. Okay, gotcha.
Can I just say, although I live in Atlanta, I'm still a Saints fan. I just wanted to be clear.
Oh, nice work.
Oh, they
nice
work.
work.
Do they work? They don't all work.
Well, let's
So Mike
spread
did
the
not
love.
work this morning. So.
Yeah, we're gonna
Well,
just
we'll
have a
turn mine this way. How about that?
Hello? Oh, shoot. Okay, hi. Now we're professional. Everyone can hear me now.
I don't know about me. Oh, ooh.
Okay, we're set. Okay, so I have some questions for our panelists, and we'll just have a pretty free-wheeling discussion that can go wherever it goes, but we will leave 15 minutes at the end to kind of have your questions. So please be thinking about what those questions are. What is the 15-minute before the end time?
Y'all have it until you look at the top. Y'all have until 2:45. So
2:30. Okay, we got it. Great. So yeah, be thinking for 2:30. You got me. Okay. So I just wanted to start with your books. They're both full of such interesting characters, and they're both books that are very intergenerational and about family. So I wanted to start with y'all starting places. How did these two stories come to be, and what inspired you to write your books?
Yeah, you want to go first? Sure. So my book, of course, is The Gardens of Eden. And it is about a family of women who live in the fictional town of Eden, Georgia. Now, the garden women are named Mary, Martha, Naomi, and Ruth. So if those names sound familiar to you, it's because I borrowed them from the world's most popular book, the Bible. Just growing up, I just always wondered what happened after the stories told in the Bible, so I made it up. It's totally fiction. It's not doctrinally sound. My pastor has approved it. He says he's okay with it, so I'm all right. But also, people don't have to have any knowledge of the Bible to be drawn into the drama that happens in the Garden family. They're fighting over secrets and money and who's in control, and I think everyone can relate to that.
Trinity, it follows 3 generations of Black men in the South who are trying to transmute the violence of colonization out of their families. Of course, that violence was, just generationally part of their reality. And there's a girl spirit who tells the story, and she is trying to get over all of the obstacles that have occurred with that violence so that she can actually be in this life. So we get her passages of trying to be here, and she is in part 3, and she is Lottie Rebecca Lee, and she comes into the story and offers the family the ways that story and nature sound familiar can help them to generationally heal. And I started writing the novel because I didn't know I was writing a novel. I just write every day. And then whatever comes of it gets patterned and put together. But I was doing a writing exercise with some students where one of the healing pieces that I do with people is to right the wounds of the perpetrator of your wounds, particularly if it was a family member, because that is a healing process. Now, I wait until they are way into, that's not a first thing that they do. So by that time, they're way into the process of writing about their own wounds. And so I was working on writing the wounds of my father. And that's what opens the novel. It's Benny, he's 10 years old. It's Sampson, Mississippi, 1939. So, yeah.
And I'm taking notes because I'm going to do that exercise.
Oh, there you go, yeah.
That's brilliant.
It's in the soul of the full-length manuscript, and I don't recommend doing that without having therapeutically done the work first, or starting the soul of the full-length manuscript from the beginning, and then working through, because it's a jarring place to be, and to just land, to just put yourself in that place without any transition.
I appreciate that.
Rosie, your book combines these characters that, like, two from the Old Testament, two from the New Testament, and reimagines them as part of the same family. And I'm wondering, like, how you chose these specific characters from the Bible, because there's so many people in the Bible.
That's a great question. So I bought one of those like devotionals for women that breaks down like each woman and kind of talks through her story, and just kind of tried to figure out which ones resonated with me. Because I grew up in church and read the Bible, I was familiar with them, but I was looking for things that might connect them. And really, Mary and Martha don't have any connection to Ruth and Naomi. But I just thought that in thinking about family drama, putting those two pairs together would be interesting. So it was really kind of a matter of convenience, quite honestly. Work smarter, not harder.
And Zelda, like, your book is called Trinity. It also has characters that are wrestling with religion, but also, like, the book itself is divided into Father, Son, and Spirit. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the role of, like, faith or spirituality in your book.
Yeah, so in the story, the men, they travel everywhere that Black men would have gone between 1929 and then when the book ends in the 2000s. So we go to Vietnam, Korea, Vietnam, all over the United States. And they're trying different strategies, like we all do, right? We're all trying to heal from colonization. Whatever our problem is, colonization is associated with it. And so they go all over the place, and and as they try to heal, so joining the military is a possibility for those families that are trying to get over the ways that capitalism is difficult for the family. Church, and religion is a way to try to deal with the pain. And so religion comes in a lot in that way. And then of course, well, not of course, but I'm very spiritual, and you hear people say this all the time, but I'm very spiritual, but I was raised with, Black Baptist. So I have all of those points of reference. So in the story, they are in the church sometimes. Yeah, and sometimes it's not working, so they're, fishing. Yeah.
Can you say a little bit more about what colonialism looks like when it manifests in individual people's lives?
Mm-hmm.
I bet you.
Ooh, it mostly manifests, I think, for all of us in our daily lives around finances. So imagine if I said to you, wow, I've got this, and y'all got this? Do any of y'all have one of these right now? Mm-mm. And then I say, well, I have this great idea. I'm going to distill every single resource, this microphone, the laptop, your pants, the little metal plate on the chair, your glasses, your lipstick, every single resource, those pictures, the owls themselves, everything into this. If you can't have this, you can't have any of those. And so that's the way that most of us are impacted by it, is by that dumb idea. Well, it kind of was a smart idea that turned into a dumb thing. For capitalism, for money, for the idea of money, of things distilled into one resource and then separating people from it. We have lots of ways that colonization wounds us, but its evil minion capitalism is probably the worst, because now it's a poison that we all, have ingested, and, we all want, the only way we can sort of survive in it. So think about the system as, I'm not going to go on too long with this because I'm going to start preaching, but if you think about a system that someone tries to impose on top of the actual ecology, which we belong to, that's what capitalism is. It's this attempt to impose a system of resources and of breath and of belonging on top of the one that already exists. So then any time that within that system, your breath does not matter, your attempt to feed yourself, to do the things within the system to actually survive can be stopped by, y'all don't have this bracelet, sorry. So that's, I feel, the way that most of us are impacted by it, and the characters in the story are definitely impacted by it. And I'll say one more tiny thing, and the ridiculousness of the idea of race. Race is not a thing. Racism is a thing. So people making other people do things, not do things, harming them over the illusion of something, which is race, because there's no race. We're one species, period. But that's the other thing that harms. You and I were having some fun conversations about that earlier. I was like, man, it has taken over the whole planet. Like, every culture has been harmed by the notion of race. So anyway.
Yeah, and I think kind of getting into that, both of you have written a lot about just whether it be dueling over resources, or this intergenerational trauma that comes from slavery or different other things. What do you think the role of fiction is in tackling these difficult realities, be it in colonialism or with health or different things like that? Yeah. And Rosie, if you could take
Yeah, absolutely. So I think fiction is a great tool. And so Zelda's book and mine are very different, but also very similar in some ways. So, for example, my family, the Gardens, they lived together on an estate that was passed down through generations. The town of Eaton, Georgia is a fictional town that I based on towns like Eatonville, Florida, and Robert Settlement in Indiana. Places that were founded by African Americans, but that weren't allowed to thrive because of a quest for power, because of racism, etc. And so I wondered what would happen if those types of towns had been allowed to grow and thrive. What would those people's lives look like? And so in my book, it's this family that are, a Black family in rural Georgia that they are all, they own this multi-million-dollar company. So, you heard in the introduction that I'm from the West Bank. My father's from central Louisiana. He grew up picking cotton in Avoyelles Parish. So he also went to school, went to college, had me and my siblings, and I write using a pen name. I'm actually a physician. But I'm also not a multimillionaire. And so thinking about what if my father's family had that type of opportunity, where would I be now? No, I might still be a physician, but I think my work would be even more meaningful because I'd have more resources that because of my personality, would likely put into providing healthcare to people. And so there's a character in my book, Martha, who's a physician. And so I really think that fiction is a great way to talk about these things that sometimes we, in our everyday lives, don't think about the impact. But because of the social issues that we're dealing with in our communities, we're all impacted by them in some way. As Zelda mentioned, kind of on one side or the other, or sometimes still impacted. Because you know what? Like, poverty is something that people of all races face, right? And so, my book really talks about that too. And I think, even your example, talking about that really highlights some of those things. And I think fiction is a great tool to allow us to kind of deal with that instead of some of the heavy ways that we deal with it in everyday life, like in the news or in the doctor's office.
All right, I'm so distracted. I'm like, Martha, doctor. Okay, I just left this other panel. Okay. I'm like, be here now, so be here now. Yeah.
Because fiction takes you to another place, right?
Yeah.
And that's part of the point.
Yeah. So yeah, I think too that like it helps to contextualize. So if we all have the disease, right, and the dis-ease of of buying into the bullshit of race and capitalism. Okay, so if we all have the dis-ease, then we are all walking around with some of it internalized, whether it's internal victimization, internal pressure, internal superiority lie, whatever it is, it's internalized in some kind of way. And so then if we are, but then if we all love story, right? We all love to listen. I'm not saying we all do, but I said if we all do. If we all love to listen to story and have story from each other and love someone to tell us about their experience, then it's a way in which we then, that is of the natural system. So that is of the ecosystem. That is of the human, loves to herd and flock system. And so then if we are sharing then the experiences of people who have had difficulties because of the isms and the lies, then we then can break down those barriers some, and then we can realize that there's humanity in it. So whenever I go to a reading or I go to read my book, the first thing that I say to the audience is, before I read any of this story to you, call on all that you know as a human being of your experiences in this life. And then I begin reading so that people can relate to it, and I say, oh, that's a Black book, or that's a Korean book, or that's a Native American book. It's like, no, whatever you do, don't think about that. Think about yourself, which is kind of, an easier thing to do. So I think story has the capacity really to help bring it home, to bring us home to each other and to ourselves, so.
And
That's beautiful.
that is. Both of you tackle these really difficult topics in your writing, and I'm wondering how you maintain hope when grappling with these harsh realities, whether it be from the past or the present.
Sure. I love that question, because you said, as you read my bio, that I write stories about complicated families and complex friendships, but a happy ending or hopeful ending is guaranteed, or something like that. I've got a couple different versions of my bio, but that's really the whole point, right? Because life is a struggle. Life's hard. And I don't read books or watch films that don't have a happy ending. I'm that person who reads the summary first to make sure there's a happy ending, because I deal with so many heavy things in my life. If I read something that's heavier that doesn't have a happy ending, it's really more for enlightenment or for work. But for fun, I read happy, hopeful things. And so I wanted to write books that people could relate to, that have some of the complicated, complex, messy family and friendship stuff that we deal with, but I write it in a way that it works out in the end. What I usually say is it works out, or it works out for now, which means there's another book coming, as there is for my book. And so there is a happy ending, but there are a couple stones that are left not quite turned fully, and so that's why there's a second book, so you can get a more full happy ending, because I want that for all of my characters.
So the question, tell me again. I was holding on to the word. I was
How
holding
do
on to
you-
hope.
How do you maintain hope while grappling with harsh realities?
Oh yeah, the same way I do in my life. So my characters, I let them have what I feel like I have, is that I lead with love, with curiosity. When I see a person or meet a person, I want to know who you are. I want to play. Can we play? I brought I went back to the hotel to get my tennis shoes, because I am gonna challenge everybody this afternoon to, will somebody come play with me? It's so important for me to be outside and I need to go play, but I don't know what the play areas are. So my characters have that too. So, you know, when there's all the hard stuff, but then there's Benny and Leonard when they are little in 1939 by the side of the creek fishing in Mississippi. Because that's what I did in Mississippi. I'm a vegan and I can fish. Y'all want me to cut it up for you? What you want me to do? You know, so like fishing and being out in nature and playing with each other, being able to play with each other, and then you know, centering on love. And for me, those are you know, if capitalism is a little minion of colonization, then play and love are minions of hope, you know.
Can I add something?
Yeah, of course.
And so for me also, just being a Southerner, right? We love to get together. We love to eat good food. We love fashion. Well, I do. And so those are things I really enjoy. And so as I was getting at in my answer, but I don't think I think I forgot to mention this. I wove some of those things into my book too. Like this dress is by Christopher John Rogers for Target though, because I can't afford his stuff that's in Neiman Marcus and all those other places. But I love fashion and it makes me happy. And so I wove that into my books too in hopes that for other people who enjoy those things, they'll continue to be inspired by them. Because I think we have to enjoy those things in life. For me, that's a part of what keeps me hopeful too. You know, focusing on the things that bring joy. And I think it's important that when you write fiction that deals with heavy things, that those joys are also there. And I think that's another similarity, you know, mentioning the fishing too, yeah. So I love to eat, I love to get together and have fun and wear pretty clothes.
Speaking of loving to eat, because I do, in your book, Mary and Martha are both trying to like have a spot in a restaurant, and they're like, you know, they got a catering business. There's so much stuff going on, but when you're describing the food, I was like, there's stuff going on. It's really bad, but I want to eat peanut butter crunch right now. And I just wanted to ask you a little bit about that, like why food specifically? What made you want to put that in?
Yeah, thanks for that. Like I said, like food is really an important part of family culture for me. So my grandmother used to make peanut butter crunch. Now, I don't know if anyone else grew up eating peanut butter crunch in schools, but it was a staple in the cafeteria in Jefferson Parish where I grew up. And my grandmother was the cafeteria manager. So if I had peanut butter crunch at school, I knew that if there were leftovers at my grandmother's school, that I was gonna have some when I got home. And so we loved it so much that she would just make it for us, just randomly. And it's just one of my favorite things. And so my book is a way to honor the women in my family who inspired me and who gave me hope. That's actually how I chose my pen name. I chose it to honor women in my family. And so the food was also another way to do that. The French toast in the book, it's funny. I thought growing up that it was handed down from generations, but my mother got it out of like a Family Circle magazine or something. But we made it our own, and so I still put it in the book because I adapted it. Really, my mom adapted it her way, and now I've adapted it my way. And so my friends, when they read the book, they're like, "Oh, I need you to make this because when I make it, mine doesn't quite come out right." And I think that was something that I really wanted to come out in the book too, because actually Mary says that. Mary serves it in her restaurant, but she says, "But Aunt Naomi, no one makes it like you." And I just think that's such a special thing that so many of us can relate to in our families or in our friendship circles. And so I wanted to put that in the book. Again, it has all my favorite things.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
An unspoken character in both of your books is setting. And Zelda, I was wondering, like, you moved through so many different places, Mississippi, Korea, North Carolina. Can you talk to us a little bit about, like, the process of researching these different places and how they've kind of become important spots in your book?
Yeah, for me the most important research is to go live in a place or to go be there. So so these are all places except for one that I have been, that I have lived. And I think that for the places that you haven't lived in, to get someone else's lived experience in that place is very important. To be able to hear them speak about, what was it like to be there, to fight in a war, to not be thinking about war, but to be thinking about home, for your fingers to be freezing at the same time that you're hearing something whistle over your head and you're trying to disassociate what that whistling is, even though it's bullets. And to get the context of that, and then to relate that context, always to your own life, so setting, the research of setting, a lot of times I tell people, if it's a place you haven't been, then it's being able to grasp and be with someone else's experience and then connect it to yours, because ultimately you have to tell the story from your soul, so you have to connect it to some experience that you have had, where you have felt the same way or feared the same things, or, yeah.
And Rosie, we've been calling you your pen name on this panel, and you've referenced it a couple of times, but you have your alter ego as a physician, and I'm wondering how your work in the medical field has influenced your writing.
Sure. So I divide my time between community health consulting and seeing patients. I really enjoy seeing patients, but I think in order to address the health issues that we have in this country, we really have to think about them on a population level. And so my alter ego is trained in both internal medicine, that's seeing adults one-on-one, and preventive medicine and public health, and that's that population perspective. And so with the community health consulting, that's a way that I help to put together health programs to educate people on things like high blood pressure, heart disease, mental health, etc. And so my book has themes around heart health and mental health and the connection between them. I've written some short stories before and self-published those. Most of those stories have some, or not all of them, but probably a good half of them have a health connection in them. Because again, I think, we have to get more creative in this country about educating people about health so that they have the information available when they need it. And when you're preaching to people about it, people don't always absorb it. But if you tuck it into a fun story, they might remember it when they need it.
And Zelda, I'm wondering about your work as an expressive arts therapist, like how has that influenced the way that you go about writing?
Yeah, so I'll mix the answer to that into bouncing off of what you were just saying, Rosie, about people can have information about and access to something that has to do with their physical or mental health, and they're more likely to be able to seek solutions. And mental health is a big part of the life of the character who's the son, who has part 2 of the book, so that people can be able to see the trajectory of someone who is suffering, who is struggling with PTSD, and then there's just the realities of the men in the family who are from the generation before, and then the gentle steps that they are able to take with what it is that they do know, and then their love and care for BJ, and being able to take him to the VA, but then getting just the right, he ends up with just the right psychiatrist to work with him, who is listening, and paying attention to his issues in a very particular way, and goes outside of the boundaries a little bit of what maybe the rule book would say that she should do, and gives him some things to do that are unconventional but really good for him. And so the way that plays into what I know. So I come to the work that I do with other people in terms of expressive art therapies from work that I was intuitively doing for years. I sought my PhD at 50, mostly because I had been for years doing a particular type of work, and people would say, "Oh my gosh, that was like therapy. That was like, I feel like you are my practitioner now." And I felt very nervous about, at some point I began to feel very nervous about there's what I know intuitively and indigenously inside of my soul. And then there might be things that I don't know that are intellectual, that are part of ways of knowing from other people that I need to go and get. And so the ways that all of that then is like spiced into the stories of the characters in their own healing process is also part of my healing process as a person, you know, who survived multiple traumas in my life.
Kind of switching gears a little bit. I think that something that's really important to talk about is like our writerly legacies. Like we're talking about family legacies, but like there's also just like there are people that came before us that wrote other things that maybe inspired your work or maybe just like helped you think about what was possible in literature. So I'm wondering who you consider to be like your foremothers in writing.
That's a big question, because there are lots of people, I think. But, you know, I think about growing up reading Judy Blume books and just not being able to get enough of them, and seeing myself in Are You There, God, It's Me, Margaret, and wanting to read more books that allowed me to find things that I related to, which of course led me later in life to Nikki Giovanni and Dr. Maya Angelou in high school and junior high also too. And those are books those are authors who I read repeatedly. And really for a good stretch, I read more of their work than fiction, because I felt like Dr. Angelou writes in a way that feels like it's a novel, when actually it's really nonfiction memoir writing. And so for me, as I write fiction, I find myself again just being influenced by those. So when I was very young, I loved poetry, which is again how I got into Nikki Giovanni. And so there's actually a poem in my novel, which is funny because I never let anyone read the poetry that I write because I don't think it's very good. But since it was written by an amateur in the book, I figured I could, you know, write it for him.
So there's the person I always think of first is Toy Derricott. She's a poet and a teacher, and you know she's retired now, but she's just a beautiful human being. When I came to my writing with poetry first. I now believe that, you know, your expressions are like water. They come out in whatever container they're in. That's the genre. But it's, you know, we don't really need to go, I don't need to be like, oh, this is memoir, this is poetry. And so with Toy, there was this way in which I was like 22 maybe, and I was like one of those poets who was getting all the snaps, you know, and I was like doing open mic, and people would be like, woo, and they just did, And then I was in one of her seminars, and I read one of the poems that I'd be getting big snaps for, and she said, that was clever. What is the poem? And of course I went home, and I was like, she don't know me, because I was 22, so I was like, what's she talking about? You know, so I had a lot of that going on, but I also don't resist a challenge when someone challenges my spirit, my intellect. And so that night I was like, I'm going to write this poem. I'm going to tell the truth in this poem. And I came, it was grandmother's grave, and I came back, and every time I read it, just like now on the top of my head, it would tingle because of the honesty in the poem. And she was like, that's what I'm talking about. And then I wrote like that. I'm just not satisfied unless my human spirit is inside of the poem, unless I have channeled something. So I think of her, I think of Dorothy Allison, whose work I read, and you know, both of these women remained connected to me because of the ways in which we try to tell the truth, and the ways in which they worked with me to tell the truth. So I think of them mostly when I think of that. And then there's just slews of people's work that I read, you know, they could be a student of mine or something that I'm just like, oh my gosh, you touched the spirit with that. You know, you told some truth in that, so, yeah.
I should have taken one of those poetry classes. I'd be more confident in my.
It's never too late.
Right.
Yeah.
We touched on this a little bit earlier, but I wanted to ask you guys what you're working on now. Rosie, we can start with you.
Yes,
You talked a little, there was a little
yes.
teaser about the sequel.
I did get a little teaser. So the second book in my Gardens of Eden series is called A Garden Wedding, and it will be out in May. So I won't say anything more than that because I want you to read the first book. But the books are also written in a way that you don't have to read them in order. You know, there are lots of series where people will, you know, later write a prequel. So, you know.
Is it the same characters?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. All, I've planned 3 books. I'm not sure about the third one yet, but all 3 books will deal with the garden work. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, so I finished a memoir, and it's, you know, bouncing around. People are like, we don't know what to do with this.
That's
It's a good thing, because it's not like, oh, I don't have to explain because of everything I just said to you. They're like, oh my God, whoa, okay, wow, okay. And it really just, it follows me from age 9, where I feel like at that age, that at the beginning of that year, I deposited my omniscience. I tried to deposit it with my 10-year-old sister. You know, somebody's a year older than you and you're 9. They're like older than Methuselah, so you think they have all the wisdom in the world. So it follows from my 9th year of where some of the compound of trauma was all in that year. There was a lot in that year, and I feel like intellectually, spiritually, emotionally, I tried to deposit everything that I knew in one spot. And then, you know, there's all of my life that happens of trying to, you know, get over and around the boundaries of colonization and everything, and still to love and to be happy and to be myself. So that's what that book's about. And then I am writing right now a novel that requires some financial assistance that I have written to the Guggenheim Foundation about to try to get some help with the research. I don't want to tell too much about it, but it follows the situation of a young woman who is an ethnobotanist whose grandmother passes away. She lives in Chicago. Her grandmother passes away, and she, her depression and anxiety are preventing her from saving her own research from her white male counterparts in her department. And what she ends up doing is, I'm trying not to, I'm like, not give stuff away, but she ends up being able to get a grant that she uses to go back to trace her own ethnicity. And what she finds in looking for the seeds and the plants and everything of her maternal lineage is something that those researchers have actually been looking for, that have to do with our evolution that only lives inside of her body. Yeah, so it's temporarily titled The Seeds of Ash. Yeah.
For those of you who haven't had the opportunity to read Trinity, there is a character named Lottie Rebecca Lee that we talked a little bit about earlier, and she tries very hard to come into this world 2 times and finally does break through in a 3rd generation. And I wanted to ask the both of you if there's any project you've wanted to bring into the world that hasn't quite broken through yet. And we can start with you, Zelda.
I will say that there's one that I've been trying to bring into the world that just broke through, because I had a triple epiphany last week about that situation that I kind of giggled about you know, when you're looking for the wrong I won't say wrong, when you're looking for, sometimes I have to close my eyes to concentrate, the collaborators, but your own internalized bullshit is keeping you from seeing who the collaborators actually are, because you're looking for the collaborators who have claimed superiority. I was doing that, and then so I figured that out, plus a couple of other layers of things at the exact same time that I figured out, that I think removes the blockage of what I consider the work being finished when the audience gets it. So I had to remove I had to have an actualization around the blockage, so I think now it can come through, yeah.
So I was gonna say no, but then I realized that I probably do have one, and that's the third book in the series. I've got a 2-book contract, so that's why I can't say for sure that was gonna happen. But when we tried to find we meaning my agent and I tried to find a publisher for the Gardens of Eden series, we pitched it as a 3-book series. Because you can imagine, I'm working on the first book. I actually only planned it to be a standalone. But as I started writing it, I thought, ooh, this could be a series. And I didn't think I'd be like, a series type author. Because there's a lot of fear of, will the second book live up to what you want it to, or will people be like, oh, she should have stopped at that first one. I don't want to be that author. So I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that. I'm only going to write standalones. But as I really got into it, I just started getting more ideas about a second book and then possibly a third. But I just, as you can imagine, with the first book, I didn't have, as I was working on the first book, I didn't have a very clear idea of what would happen in the second book. I had a high level kind of 1-paragraph description type thing that came very easily. When I wrote that for the third book, I didn't have a lot of faith in it. I still put it in, but I guess my publisher was like, yeah, let's just do 2 books, we're not sure. And maybe that's because I didn't have a fully fleshed out idea. But as I wrote the second book, I said, we'll see how I feel about this third one. I don't know that that's gonna happen. But as I wrote it, I got the best ideas. And so I'm so excited. And I think that it's gonna be fantastic. But so I'm actually about to start that one. I'm working on kind of just like my outline right now. And I'm very excited about it. So I think it's I'm sorry. I silenced my phone, but apparently that does not fire alarms. So I think the third book will be fantastic too.
Okay, we'll keep our fingers crossed for that.
Yeah,
We're here.
starting it soon.
Okay, as I promised, it is 2:30, and so we can take reader questions if anyone has questions. Yes.
One of the things that I think is very healing is humor. Is there much humor in y'all's books?
So there is in mine. I wouldn't consider myself a comedy writer, but there are definitely some things that make you laugh out
I can confirm the book is there's some things.
Yeah, and in mine, some things pop up that, would cause certain people to laugh, and then later other people to laugh. There's a lot of mother-daughter stuff for me that brings some of the humor because, being the mom of a now adult child, and so there's a couple of spaces like that, and then a couple of other places that I feel like most of the humor has to do with parenthood.
Yeah, Audrey Rebecca Lee is a very funny
Yeah.
character because she shows up and she's like, she knows everybody. Like people think that they're like, oh, like I'm racist. No, she knows. And so it was really fun to watch that dynamic.
Did you intend to make her funny?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Because she's a combination, like her omniscience, is all the children that I've known. So even some of my stuff is mixed in there. My daughter, my granddaughter, there's this sort of, and my goddaughter, and there's this sort of way of being where you feel like they've been here before. But in her case, she opens the story, spiritually. She opens as a spirit, and then you see all these other lives, and you witness all the time she's trying to get here. So by the time she's born, she's 3 years old. She was like, she's like, these people think they're older than me. What the heck? You know, but she's got this little bitty voice and these little bitty hands, and they're laughing at her. So, so it was a way to make humor out of something that I feel like there are little girls who are traumatized by it. My daughter is still to this day, she's like, yeah, I still don't like it when somebody laughs, because she was like, people thought I was so cute, but I felt like I knew what I was saying. Yeah, so yeah, but in the book it's lots of spaces to laugh with that. So yeah.
I wonder if it's, and then the reason I asked that is because I'm a debut author and you're not. And so I'm wondering if I'll get to that point where I know that I'm writing something funny.
Yeah.
I really didn't at first. I mean, I laughed as I wrote it, but I didn't plan it that way.
Yeah.
So I really hope I get to that place.
Well, it's not a place where I say, oh, now I'm gonna write in something funny. Yeah, like I write in discovery mode. Like I never know what I'm writing when I'm writing. I always know I don't. It's like, you know, and I teach other people to write like that. You know, somebody last week in the workshop I was teaching said, you're basically teaching us to write as if we're high. And it's like, yeah, it's just like you're just going for it, but then you read what you wrote and it brings you to tears or to laughter or to, because you let go, like intellectually let go and just be in the flow of it. And so using multiple art forms to inspire that, music and other poetry and everything, whatever gets you in the zone. And then once you're there, you're not thinking, you're just writing. And sometimes, you know, afterwards I'm like, okay, what did I write? And I read it and I'm like, that's freaking hilarious.
So I should get high, got it.
Well, not, well, I'm just kidding. I do not.
See, I am funny, who knew?
Right?
I think I saw a question here, but we can go here first.
Yeah, my question is, sometimes it can be difficult to like broach sensitive topics in a way that does not alienate your audience, if that question makes sense. How do you broach sensitive topics in a way that doesn't alienate certain members of your audience?
Well, look, if you just tell them the truth, whoever is supposed to have that food, medicine, and kinship is supposed to have it. It's not your business who your audience is. An apple tree, well, we don't know what apple trees think, but I'm gonna pretend. An apple tree does not, you know, like create these beautiful palms and then be like, oh my gosh, this one is too red. I don't know if other people are going to like this, or oh my gosh, these are Granny Smiths. Some people are not going to like Granny Smiths. The people who are supposed to have that food, medicine, and kinship of whatever it is that you wrote, whatever breath you breathed, will have that, period. And I did say period.
And I would say, you know, stay true to yourself and stay true to your characters. There were some things that I wrote that I wondered, ooh, are people, you know, gonna have an issue with this? Or are they gonna say, oh, I thought Rosie was, you know, light and heartwarming. How's she talking about this? But again, it's real life. And I think helping, for me, reading is about, it's about escape, but it's also about enlightenment and joy. And so I wanna package things in a way that feels true to me, but also like doesn't feel heavy-handed. It makes sense for my characters. And so if one of my characters is having an issue, then what I would hope is that even if someone else is on the other side of that issue, that as they've gotten to know that character, then I hope that they can see it through that character's eyes. And if they don't, then, you know, that's a personal decision. But I feel like I've got to be true to myself and true to the characters.
And it makes me curious. So for you, I want to ask, like, what brought that question forward for you? Because if you can be more specific, then we can address more specifically what you might need.
Thank you. That's nice of you to ask that. Yeah, I've written some books that touch on topics that have to do with race. And I thought that I was just speaking honestly, but members of my audience have said that it has actually it's hurt their feelings. And I don't want to hurt, I don't want to hurt anybody by bringing up topics that are really sensitive when it comes to like race and culture. So I don't know. I guess I just don't know how to do that without I don't want to make anybody feel like they're in the wrong just for existing in a certain culture, because you can't help what culture you come from, or I don't know. I'm not really being very clear, I guess, but I just want to write in a way that's honest and open, that builds empathy instead of separating people, if that makes sense.
That does make sense. So there is, like being as, this is just me answering, like trying to go get lots of answers. But, from the Zelda land, there's, when you tell your truth and when you are telling about your experiences here in this life, that's your thumbprint. And so only one person can leave that, and that's you. And so there's going to be people who their understanding of story is different, because their understanding of story might come from a sort of colonized Western place where they're not thinking of story the way that they think about fruits and vegetables and things that grow in a garden and things that grow in the woods. Not all plants are companion to other plants, so you didn't like everybody. Things hurt you. It caused you to have like internalized protection and all these kinds of things, just like things in nature, because you're part of it, would have. And so some people might read that, and that might be the best thing that they need to hear because they've been going through that also. Some people might read it, and so one way to take their aversion to it is that, oh my God, that wasn't your medicine, and this medicine actually made you feel sick. So this wasn't your medicine, this is somebody else's medicine. Oh, okay, my bad, It should be that way about it, because some people your experiences won't enrich their lives, them hearing about it, and that's okay. It wasn't their food or their medicine or their kinship.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can I make a comment? I think the best way to write a horrible book is to try to make everybody happy.
That's the 100% true. That is the
And,
100%
your people are going to find you. I mean, I'm a physician, and one of my reviews was, obviously this lady ain't never set a foot in the hospital, and I've spent 35 years in a hospital. So I think what you're saying, you got to write your own honest truth.
You do. And I'll tell you, I don't routinely read my reviews. There's, this whole school of thought that authors shouldn't read them. I tend to read mine, read the early ones, like pre-release. And so there are some where some early readers said, this book is, I thought this was a book about women of the Bible. And I'm like, well, it's in the description, and it's not quite. It's loosely inspired by, is the language that my publisher used. But I think, there are people who think, oh, this is exactly like the Bible, and it's not. And so, you could say, oh, well, I thought that all people who read the Bible or all women who read the Bible would like this book. They might not. If they're expecting a very, religious book, then, my book will disappoint them, because it's written for both mainstream readers and people who read Christian fiction. It is. And so, I think that's a great way to put it. This just isn't your medicine, and that's okay.
I mean, as a book reviewer, I'm on the other side of things, and I think that a really big thing that kind of influences the way that a reader comes to a book is the way that it's marketed, and the way that a publicist or a publisher is talking about the book. And so there are a lot of books that I see that, like, they could be great books, but then whenever I see them on social media, people are saying, like, oh, this book is terrible because it's not like this other book that I was told it was like. And I'm like, well, that's not the author's fault, you guys. That's not their fault. That's not their problem. But, like, it's just, you can put out what you need to write in the world, and then after that, people will take what they will from it, I think, is a good thing. Do we have any other questions?
Can I add that that's true of any practice? So whatever y'all are doing out there, whatever you're practicing, whatever you're putting out to the world, whatever your occupation, whatever is your work, there are gonna be people who are like, oh my gosh, this is so good for me. I'm so glad that you're doing this. And then there are gonna be people who are gonna be like, what the hell are you doing? And so, you know, I think it's like this tendency that we, you know, that most of us, I won't say all of us, but a lot of us tend to have of paying more attention to the people who said, I don't like this, than to the people who said, oh my gosh, I like this. Imagine if we only paid attention to the people who said, I really like this. You know? I mean, that would be an extreme. That's not necessarily good for you either, but it would really shift things because, you know, yeah, so I think that's just true of whatever your work is.
Yeah, and there's a phrase about a book finding its readers, and I think that goes along with the, you know, this medicine is for you or this medicine is not for you. And we don't get to decide that as authors, right? Because people have this thing called free will. They can read what they want. And sometimes, you know, people can tell before they even read a book that a book is for them, but sometimes they can't. And so it's okay. It can take some getting used to, but it's okay. And that's just, it's a progress. It's a process.
And imagine if you don't tell the thing. And then there's some starving soul out there who needed that. Yeah, true. Yeah, for sure.
Amen.
Well, thank you so much, everyone, for being here. If you have decided that this is your medicine, this is your friendship, you can meet both of our lovely authors in the book signing tent in approximately 15 minutes, where they will be doing their book signings. And yeah, thank you so much.